Welcome to Bible Stories HQ. Today, we're diving into the complete story of Job, a tale of unimaginable suffering, unshakable faith, and God's divine justice that will leave you in awe. Did you know that Job endured trials so intense they defy human understanding? And yet, shocking truths hidden in the Word of God reveal a deeper purpose behind his pain. Stay tuned to discover how his story unfolds in ways that will challenge everything you thought you knew. Make sure you watch this story to the end. You won't want to miss the intriguing twists that will keep you on the edge of your seat. If this piques your curiosity, like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating Bible stories. Let's uncover the profound lessons in Job's journey together. Job, a man of unparalleled integrity, lived in the land of Uz. He was known for his honesty, strong moral character, and unwavering devotion to God. The Bible describes him as blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Job's life reflected a deep commitment to righteousness, setting him apart as an extraordinary individual. Job was not only spiritually wealthy, but also materially blessed. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, creating a large and joyful family. His wealth was astounding, with 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. Additionally, he employed numerous servants to manage his vast estate. Job's abundance and prominence made him the greatest man among all the people of the East. Job's dedication to his family was evident in how he prayed and offered sacrifices for them. His sons often held feasts in their homes, inviting their sisters to join in the celebrations. After each feast, Job would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings for each of his children. He thought, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." This practice reflected Job's concern for their spiritual well-being, showing his role as a protector and intercessor for his family. Job's life seemed ideal, blessed with wealth, family, and faith. However, this peaceful existence was about to face an unimaginable test. Unknown to Job, a conversation in the heavenly realms would soon change everything. Satan, the accuser, appeared before God and challenged Job's faith. He argued that Job's righteousness was based solely on the blessings he had received. Satan claimed that if Job's possessions were taken away, he would surely curse God. God, confident in Job's faithfulness, permitted Satan to test him, but placed a limit on the trials. Satan could take all that Job had, but he was forbidden from harming Job himself. Thus, the stage was set for a profound test of Job's character, one that would reveal the depth of his faith and trust in God. Job's story begins as one of devotion, prosperity, and righteousness, but it foreshadows a journey of immense suffering and ultimate redemption. His life reminds us that even those who are upright and faithful are not exempt from trials. The question that looms is whether Job's faith will endure when faced with unimaginable loss. How will Job respond when everything he holds dear is stripped away? Stay with us as we uncover the unfolding drama in chapter 2. One day, as the heavenly beings presented themselves before God, Satan, the accuser, was among them. God asked Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan replied, "From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it." Then God drew attention to Job, saying, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him, blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." Satan challenged God, claiming that Job's faithfulness was rooted in the blessings he enjoyed. "Does Job fear God for nothing?" Satan asked. "You have put a hedge around him, his household, and everything he has. You bless the work of his hands, and his possessions increase in the land. But now Stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." Confident in Job's faith, God allowed Satan to test him, saying, "Very well, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself, do not lay a finger." Satan left to carry out his plan. What followed was a series of unimaginable tragedies. While Job's children feasted at the home of his eldest son, a messenger arrived with devastating news. The oxen were plowing, and the donkeys were grazing nearby when the Sabaeans attacked. They stole the animals and killed the servants. "I am the only one who escaped to tell you." Before the first messenger could finish, another arrived, saying, "Fire from the sky fell and burned up the sheep and the servants. I am the only one who escaped to tell you." As that messenger spoke, yet another arrived with more calamity. "The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties, swept down on your camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword. I am the only one who escaped to tell you." Finally, the most heart-wrenching news came. "Your sons and daughters were feasting at their eldest brother's house when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the house. It collapsed on them, and they are all dead. I am the only one who escaped to tell you." In a single day, Job lost everything: his livestock, his servants, and his beloved children. Overwhelmed with grief, Job tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell to the ground. But instead of cursing God, Job worshipped. He said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." Despite the devastating losses, Job did not sin or blame God. His response was one of profound faith, a testament to his unwavering trust in God's sovereignty. How will Job's faith endure as the trials intensify? Will his devotion remain steadfast? The next chapter delves deeper into Job's incredible journey of faith. Stay tuned. As Job mourned his devastating losses, the heavenly realms witnessed another gathering of angels before God. Satan once again appeared among them. God spoke, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him, blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil, and he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without reason." Satan, undeterred, replied, "Skin for skin. A man will give all he has for his own life. But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." Confident in Job's unwavering faith, God granted Satan permission to test Job further, but with one condition. "Very well, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." Satan departed and inflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. The sores itched, oozed, and caused excruciating pain, leaving Job in physical and emotional torment. In his anguish, Job took a piece of broken pottery to scrape his sores as he sat among ashes, a sign of deep mourning and humility. Even in his misery, Job's faith did not falter. However, the challenges continued to mount. Seeing her husband suffering, Job's wife, overwhelmed by grief and despair, said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." Her words reflected the depth of their shared pain, yet Job rebuked her gently, saying, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" Job's response revealed his unwavering trust in God, even amidst profound suffering. He refused to blame God or turn away from him, acknowledging that both blessings and trials are part of life under God's sovereign plan. As news of Job's condition spread, 3 of his friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, traveled to comfort him. When they saw Job from a distance, they were horrified. His appearance was so altered by his suffering that they barely recognized him. Overcome with grief, They wept aloud, tore their robes, and sprinkled dust on their heads, a traditional expression of sorrow. For 7 days and 7 nights, they sat in silence with Job, recognizing the enormity of his pain. Their silent presence was a testament to their initial empathy and respect for the depth of his anguish. Yet this silence would soon give way to conversations that would test Job's patience and deepen his internal struggle. With his body ravaged by disease and his friends now entering the picture, how will Job's journey unfold? Will their words bring comfort or further challenge his faith? Join us in the next chapter to discover what happens next. After 7 days of silent mourning with his friends, Job could no longer contain the anguish in his heart. He broke the silence with a lament that was both raw and deeply sorrowful. Job cursed the day of his birth, expressing a desire that he had never been born. His pain, both physical and emotional, poured out in a torrent of words. "Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest, but only turmoil." Job's lament was not a rejection of God, but a heartfelt cry for understanding. He questioned the purpose of his suffering, grappling with the mystery of why such calamity had befallen him. "What I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me." His words revealed the depth of his despair, yet they also demonstrated his desire for clarity and meaning amid the chaos. Job's friends, who had initially sat silently in solidarity, now felt compelled to speak. Eliphaz, the eldest of the three, was the first to respond. While he acknowledged Job's past righteousness and the encouragement Job had given to others, he suggested that Job's suffering must stem from hidden sin. "Consider now, who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed?" Eliphaz claimed that God's justice was unerring and that Job's plight must result from wrongdoing. He even shared a vision he had experienced, emphasizing that no mortal could be pure before God. Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can even the strongest be more pure than their Maker? Job, already overwhelmed by his circumstances, found no comfort in Eliphaz's words. Instead of solace, his friend's response deepened his isolation. Job longed for understanding and compassion, yet he faced accusations that questioned his integrity. The interaction set the tone for the dialogues to follow. Job's friends, while initially empathetic, began to assert their own interpretations of his suffering, often pointing to sin or wrongdoing as its cause. Job, steadfast in his integrity, defended himself and wrestled with the seeming disconnect between his faithfulness and his suffering. Job's lament and the responses of his friends highlight the tension between human understanding and divine mystery. Job's honesty in expressing his pain and confusion provides a powerful example of faith that seeks answers without abandoning trust in God. As Job's friends continue to speak, will their words bring clarity or further misunderstanding? And how will Job respond to their accusations? Stay with us as we delve deeper into this profound story in the next chapter. Following Eliphaz's speech, Bildad the Shuhite was the next to respond. His words were harsher and more direct, rooted in his belief that Job's suffering was the result of divine justice. Bildad began by accusing Job of speaking out of turn, saying, "How long will you say such things? Your words are a blustering wind." Bildad argued that God was just and that he would never pervert justice. To him, the deaths of Job's children were evidence of their wrongdoing. "When your children sinned against him, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin," Bildad stated bluntly. He suggested that if Job were truly innocent, he could plead with God and God would surely restore him. Bildad's perspective was simple and rigid. Suffering was a direct consequence of sin, and righteousness would always be rewarded. He urged Job to reflect on the wisdom of the past, saying, Ask the former generations and find out what their ancestors learned. For Bildad, history and tradition offered clear proof of God's unchanging justice. Job, deeply wounded by Bildad's insensitivity, responded with a mix of sorrow and defiance. He acknowledged God's greatness and justice, but rejected the notion that his suffering was due to sin. "How can a mortal be righteous before God?" Job asked, emphasizing the vast chasm between human frailty and divine perfection. Job lamented the imbalance of power between himself and God. He felt unable to plead his case before a God so mighty and all-knowing. "He is not a mere mortal like me that I might answer him, that we might confront each other in court," Job said. He expressed his longing for an advocate, someone who could mediate between him and God, to bridge the gap and plead his case. Job's response also reflected his growing frustration with his friends. Their accusations and rigid views offered no comfort, but instead deepened his sense of isolation. "You plaster me with lies. You are worthless physicians, all of you," he exclaimed. Job longed for understanding and compassion, but instead, he faced judgment and misunderstanding. Despite his pain, Job remained steadfast in his integrity. He refused to accept the simplistic explanations offered by his friends. His faith, though tested, held firm, and his longing for God's presence and justice became even more profound. As Zophar, the third friend, prepares to speak, will his words offer new insights, or will they add to Job's anguish? And how will Job continue to defend his innocence? Find out in the next chapter. Zophar the Naamathite, the third of Job's friends, finally spoke. Unlike Eliphaz and Bildad, Zophar's tone was the harshest, and his words cut deep. He accused Job of being arrogant for maintaining his innocence, and suggested that Job deserved even greater suffering than he was experiencing. "Are all these words to go unanswered?" Zophar asked. "Will this talker be vindicated? You say to God, 'My beliefs are flawless, and I am pure in your sight.' Oh, how I wish that God would speak, that he would open his lips against you and disclose to you the secrets of wisdom, for true wisdom has two sides. Know this, God has even forgotten some of your sin." Zophar painted a stark picture of God's greatness and justice, emphasizing that Job's suffering was justified. He called on Job to repent, claiming that if he turned back to God with a pure heart and removed sin from his life, he would once again experience prosperity and security. "Surely then you will lift up your face without shame. You will stand firm and without fear." Job, deeply pained by Zophar's accusations, responded with a mix of bitterness and defiance. He chastised his friends for their lack of compassion and their simplistic view of suffering. "Doubtless you are the only people who matter, and wisdom will die with you," Job said, his sarcasm cutting through their arguments. "But I have a mind as well as you. I am not inferior to you." Job's defense was a bold declaration of his integrity and a reflection on the mystery of God's ways. He acknowledged God's immense power and justice, but maintained that human beings often cannot comprehend his plans. He moves mountains without their knowing it and overturns them in his anger. He speaks to the sun and it does not shine. He seals off the light of the stars. In his response, Job also expressed a longing for direct communication with God. He wished for an opportunity to present his case before the Almighty, confident in his innocence. "If only there was someone to mediate between us, someone to bring us together," he lamented, revealing his desire for a deeper understanding of God's purpose in his suffering. Despite the weight of his pain and the accusations of his friends, Job's faith remained steadfast. He refused to abandon his trust in God, even as he wrestled with the profound questions of his ordeal. His resilience and honesty became a testament to his character and his relationship with God. With the cycle of accusations intensifying, how will Job's faith continue to sustain him? And will God eventually respond to his cries for understanding? Stay tuned as the story unfolds in the next chapter. After enduring harsh accusations from all three friends, Job turned his focus back to God, crying out for understanding in his suffering. The weight of their words and his own anguish drove him deeper into reflection on the vastness of God's wisdom and power. Job began to wrestle with the idea of divine justice, longing for an audience with God to plead his case directly. Man's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months, and set limits he cannot exceed, Job lamented. He recognized the fragility of human life and the futility of trying to comprehend God's ways fully. Job expressed a desperate longing for relief, asking why God seemed so distant in his time of need. "Why do you hide your face and consider me your enemy?" he asked. Yet even in his anguish, Job displayed remarkable faith. He acknowledged that God's wisdom and sovereignty far surpassed human understanding. He pondered the mysteries of creation, declaring, "The earth is in the hands of the Lord, and its treasures are beyond measure. By his power he churned up the sea, by his wisdom he cut Rahab to pieces." Job recognized that the same God who created the universe held control over his life, even in its most painful moments. As Job reflected, he also expressed a deep desire for justice. "If someone dies, will they live again? All the days of my hard service, I will wait for my renewal to come," he said. Job's hope in the possibility of redemption revealed his unyielding trust in God's ultimate plan, even when the present seemed unbearable. Despite his friends' accusations and his ongoing suffering, Job continued to maintain his integrity. He declared, "I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God." This powerful statement of faith underscored Job's belief in a future where God's justice and mercy would be fully revealed. Through his lamentations, Job offered a profound insight into the human condition, a recognition of our limitations, the mystery of suffering, and the hope for restoration. His words reflected a deep yearning for connection with God, a connection that he believed would ultimately bring clarity and peace. As Job's words grow bolder and his reflections deepen, will his cries for understanding be answered? And how will his friends react to his unwavering faith? The journey continues in the next chapter. As Job's lamentations and the accusations of his friends reached an impasse, a new voice emerged. Elihu, a younger man who had been silently observing the dialogue. Unlike Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, Elihu approached the situation with a mix of frustration and humility. He was angered both at Job for justifying himself rather than God, and at Job's friends for failing to provide meaningful answers. "I am young in years, and you are old. That is why I was fearful, not daring to tell you what I know. But it is the Spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty, that gives them understanding," Elihu began, positioning himself as a voice inspired by divine wisdom rather than human tradition. Elihu's words brought a fresh perspective to the debate. He emphasized God's justice and sovereignty, asserting that suffering could serve a purpose beyond human understanding. God does all these things to a person twice, even 3 times, to turn them back from the pit, that the light of life may shine on them, Elihu explained. He suggested that suffering could be a means of refining character and drawing people closer to God. Elihu also challenged Job's assertions of innocence, arguing that Job had become overly focused on his own righteousness rather than trusting in God's justice. "Why do you complain to him that he responds to no one's words? For God does speak, now one way, now another, though no one perceives it," Elihu said. He urged Job to recognize that God's ways were beyond comprehension, and that his purposes were always for good. Elihu's speech was not without rebuke, but it carried a tone of respect and a desire to redirect Job's focus. He reminded Job of God's greatness, using creation as an example of his unmatched wisdom and power. Listen, listen to the roar of his voice, to the rumbling that comes from his mouth. He unleashes his lightning beneath the whole heaven and sends it to the ends of the earth, Elihu proclaimed, emphasizing God's majesty. Unlike Job's other friends, Elihu did not accuse Job of specific sins, but instead encouraged him to trust in God's plan. He highlighted that God was not silent or distant, as Job had feared, but was actively working in ways Job could not yet see. Elihu's words aimed to restore Job's confidence in God's justice while affirming the mystery of his actions. Elihu's perspective introduced a critical turning point in Job's story. He reframed the debate from one of human blame to one of divine purpose, setting the stage for God himself to respond to Job's cries. With Elihu's voice echoing the greatness of God, will Job's prayers for answers finally be met? And what will God say when he speaks? The answers await in the next chapter. After Elihu's speech, the long-awaited moment arrived. God himself spoke to Job out of a whirlwind. His voice thundered with authority, cutting through the confusion and debates. Yet instead of answering Job's questions directly, God posed a series of his own, revealing his unmatched power and wisdom. "Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge?" God began. "Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me." With this, God challenged Job to consider the vastness of creation and his own limitations. God's questions drew Job's attention to the wonders of the natural world. "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know." God continued describing the grandeur of his creation, from the vast seas to the morning stars singing together at the dawn of time. As God spoke, his words emphasized not only his power, but also his care for the intricate details of creation. Who provides food for the raven when its young cry out to God and wander about for lack of food? Do you give the horse its strength or clothe its neck with a flowing mane? These vivid descriptions demonstrated God's intimate involvement in both the majestic and the humble aspects of the natural world. God also spoke of creatures that defied human control, such as Behemoth and Leviathan, symbols of untamed strength. Can you pull in Leviathan with a fishhook or tie down its tongue with a rope? Can you make a pet of it like a bird or put it on a leash for the young women in your house? These images reminded Job of the vast gulf between human capabilities and divine power. Through his questions, God did not diminish Job's suffering, but rather shifted Job's perspective. He reminded Job that the world operates according to divine wisdom, often beyond human comprehension. By highlighting his sovereignty over creation, God gently but firmly showed Job that trust in his plans was the only reasonable response. Overwhelmed by God's majesty and humbled by his words, Job replied, "I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more." Job's response reflected both his awe of God and his recognition of his own limitations. God's speech served not to explain Job's suffering, but to reveal the greatness of his character and the reliability of his justice. It was a reminder that though life's challenges may seem incomprehensible, they are held within the hands of a wise and loving Creator. With Job humbled before God's wisdom, how will his story conclude? And what will God reveal about his purposes? Stay tuned as we approach the powerful resolution in the final chapter. After hearing God speak, Job's perspective shifted entirely. He realized the limits of his understanding and the vastness of God's wisdom and power. Overwhelmed with humility, Job responded to God's challenge with repentance and reverence. "I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted," Job confessed. "Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." Job's words demonstrated his complete surrender to God's sovereignty. He no longer demanded answers, but instead embraced trust in God's divine plan, even amid suffering. His faith, tested to its limits, emerged stronger and more refined. God, satisfied with Job's humility and steadfastness, turned his attention to Job's friends. He rebuked Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar for their inaccurate and unkind words about him. "I am angry with you and your two friends, because you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has," God declared. He instructed them to offer a sacrifice and told them that Job would pray for them. Through Job's intercession, God showed mercy and forgave his friends. After Job prayed for his friends, God restored his fortunes. In fact, God blessed Job with twice as much as he had before. His livestock doubled, and he was blessed with new sons and daughters. Job's daughters were described as the most beautiful in the land, and he ensured they received an inheritance alongside their brothers, a testament to his generosity and fairness. Job lived 140 more years, witnessing 4 generations of his family. Surrounded by abundance and love, Job's latter years were filled with peace and joy. His story, though marked by profound suffering, ended with restoration and a deeper relationship with God. The story of Job teaches us powerful lessons about faith, humility, and perseverance. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, God is sovereign and faithful. Job's unwavering trust in God, even without understanding his plans, stands as a timeless example of resilience and devotion. Job's restoration was not simply about the return of material blessings. It symbolized the redemptive power of God's grace. Through Job's journey, we see that trials can lead to transformation, and suffering can refine our faith, bringing us closer to God. The story of Job reveals the beauty of trusting God, even when life's challenges seem overwhelming. What lessons from Job's journey resonate with you? Reflect on his story and find hope in the God who restores and redeems.